Biden's Attorney General Merrick Garland hauled in front of Congress today to answer some questions. And boy, do we have a lot of them. We've been following all of the partisan prosecutions from this guy's office for a long time now. And we have questions, is he really in charge? Does he know much of anything that's going on? And certainly you can be the judge. But he got a lot of questions today. We're going to go through them all and paying particular attention to the Hunter Biden investigation, the David Weiss cover-up, and the double standards that exist in his office, all that's being done on behalf of Joe Biden, his boss. So we'll start with Garland's opening statement and then finish with one of the most interesting clips of the day, which is where this guy who is so smart, was almost on the Supreme Court, now is the Attorney General, suddenly doesn't recall. Gets asked a question about Hunter and whether he contacted the FBI and put any pressure or talk to anybody over there. And they say, do you have any recollection of this? Who did you talk to? I don't recall. Well, yeah, Hunter Biden is a very forgettable character, right? Only happens to be the president's son. So this is Garland in his opening statement. Just a short excerpt here, just a quick 40 seconds. I know there's only so much we can take.
Is to pursue justice without fear or favor. Our job is not to do what is politically convenient. Our job is not to take orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate.
But you do.
As the president himself has...
But they do, okay? There's articles, even mainstream sources have confirmed it, that the White House was upset that Merrick Garland wasn't putting pressure on everybody, and then he did. And suddenly Trump gets prosecuted. Very convenient. So it was Biden being upset about it that led to what many suspect to be a change.
Said, and I reaffirm today, I am not the president's lawyer.
You act like it.
I will add, I am not Congress's prosecutor. The Justice Department works for the American people. Our job is to follow the facts and the law.
You should.
And that is what we do.
No, you do not. You should, but you do not. You make up a bunch of facts, and in some cases, you make up the law too. So that's his opening statement. Now, that was in front of Congress, and we had a couple questions right out of the gate. We'll do a couple short excerpts, and then we'll jump into this long inquisition from Russsell Fry, which was quite enlightening. But here is Jim Jordan asking Merrick Garland about David Weiss. Why has the story changed with David Weiss? David Weiss, of course, the special prosecutor who was, before becoming the special prosecutor, just a regular prosecutor who was a so-called Trump-appointed prosecutor, but then who brought a plea deal that granted Hunter Biden blanket immunity for basically all of his crimes and concocted it in a way that a judge said was inappropriate, didn't accept it, the whole thing derailed, and they gave him a promotion to now be an actual special prosecutor because he's done such a bang-up job. This is Jim Jordan saying, what the heck happened with this guy?
Quote, Mr. Weiss has full authority to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he feels it's necessary. That was your response, Attorney General, to Senator Grassley's question on March 1st, 2023. You just referenced it when Mr. Bishop was questioning you. Only problem is he'd already been turned down by the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, Mr. Graves. So he didn't have full authority, did he?
I had an extended conversation with Senator Grassley at the time. We briefly touched on the Section 515 question and how that process went. I've never been suggested...
My point's real simple, Mr. Garland. You said he had complete authority, but he'd already been turned down. He wanted to bring an action in the District of Columbia, and the U.S. Attorney there said, no, you can't. And then you go tell the United States Senate under oath that he has complete authority.
I'm going to say again that no one had the authority to turn him down. They could refuse to partner with him. They could not.
You can use whatever language. Refuse to partner is turning down.
Well, it's not the same under a well-known Justice Department practice.
Here's why this...
It's not the same according to us. No. He didn't turn down anybody. No other attorneys turn him down, Jim. In the DOJ, we call it refusing to partner, and it's a different thing. Well, the consequence of either one of those things, or whatever he wants to call it, is David Weiss can't bring charges in those jurisdictions. Doesn't matter what you call it. But do you see what they do? No. There was no rejection at all. No, it was just a refusal to partner because they are about as dishonest as it comes. Now, Merrick Garland was being very coy and sneaky today, and Massie let him have it, said, look, I know that you sit here and you tell us that you're not the president's attorney and you don't have to respond to Congress and all of these things, and you can sit there behind the executive branch and say my separation of powers and blah, blah, blah. But we fund your butts, and we have a constitutional duty as well to do oversight. And when we used to live in a country where there was at least a fiction that we were trying to work in the interest of the American people rather than just eviscerate your political opponents, which is where we're at, and it feels feels like there has absolutely been a change this year because we got 4 indictments in 4.5 months against one person, one political figure in this entire country. So we're seeing the entire structure change. But historically, the idea would be that both branches would say, okay, we're going to fight over this stuff, but eventually, we'll comply to a small degree. That's not happening anymore at all. And Massie is now blasting Garland over that.
You're citing the Constitution. I'm going to cite it. It's our constitutional duty to do oversight. Now, in that video, that was your answer to a question to me 2 years ago when I said how many agents or assets of the government were present on January 5th and January 6th and agitating in the crowd to go into the Capitol and how many went into the Capitol. Can you answer that now?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Oh, last time, you don't know how many there were or there were none?
I don't know the answer to either of those questions. If there were any, I don't know how many.
I
don't know whether there are any.
I think you may have just perjured yourself that you don't know that there were any. You want to say that again, that you don't know that there were any?
I have no personal knowledge of this matter. I think what I said last time.
You've had 2 years to find out. And the day, by the way, that was in reference to Ray Epps. And yesterday you indicted him. Isn't that a wonderful coincidence? On a misdemeanor. Meanwhile, you're sending grandmas to prison. You're putting people away for 20 years for merely filming. Some people weren't even there yet. You got the guy on video who's saying go into the Capitol. He's directing people to the Capitol before the speech ends. He's at the site of the first breach. You've got all the goods on him, 10 videos, and it's an indictment for a misdemeanor? The American public isn't buying it. I yield the balance of my time to Chairman Jordan.
May I answer the question?
I'm going to ask you one now. We'll let the gentleman
go ahead. But
in discovery, in the cases that were filed with respect to January 6th, the Justice Department prosecutors provided whatever information they had about the question that you're asking. With respect to Mr. Epps, the FBI has said that he was not an employee or informant of the FBI. Mr. Epps has been charged, and there's a proceeding, I believe, going on today on that subject.
The charge is a joke. I yield to the chairman.
The time the gentleman has expired. The chair recognizes the
charge is a joke because there are double standards for everybody. Hunter Biden gets a little slap on the wrist. Ray Epps gets a little slap on the wrist. Meanwhile, grandmas are in the gulags because of what they have done. So we continue to investigate. This is Representative Russsell Fry. Of course, this is the Judiciary Committee hearing, and he's going to walk through the entire timeline here with Merrick Garland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a slide up here, and I'll start. In October or March of 22, Mr. Weiss was denied the ability to bring charges against Hunter Biden in the District of Columbia. In April of that same year, you testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee that Mr. Weiss was free to run the investigation without interference from the DOJ. According to the IRS whistleblower, there was a meeting in October of 22 where Mr. Weiss said that he was not the deciding official on whether charges were filed. And we know that because we have handwritten notes from IRS whistleblowers that was confirmed in an email to people in the meeting. Later in January, Mr. Weiss was denied the ability to bring charges again against Hunter Biden in the Central District of California. You testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee in March of this year that he had full authority. That Weiss confirmed that to us in a letter in June, that he had been granted, quote, full authority over this matter. But then he kind of backed up. In June 30th, he said, well, just kidding. My charging authority is geographically limited to my home district.
Delaware.
In Delaware. And of course, you appoint him as special counsel. So why the heck has his story changed so many times over the course of these investigations?
Yeah, Mayor, how come?
Congressman, I've seen all of the 3 letters. I've read them quite carefully. They are all consistent with each other. And I urge everyone watching this on television or anyone who's interested to look at those 3 letters. They are not inconsistent with each other, and there's no change in the story.
But you agree that he had, and you've said this publicly, that he had ultimate authority prior to the appointment of special counsel.
I've explained this repeatedly here, or explained this in another proceeding. I said that Mr. Weiss would have the authority to bring a case in any jurisdiction in which he wanted to, and Mr. Weiss has confirmed that he would have that authority. I explained that if he had to bring a case in another jurisdiction, as a matter of mechanics, it would require me, a delegatee of mine, to sign a 515 order. That is very common.
But Mr. Attorney General,
there was nothing stopping that from happening.
Forgive me for a second, though, but that's, when you say you have ultimate, when he wrote a letter on your behalf in June, I have ultimate authority. This is prior to the designation of special counsel. Ultimate to me means like that you can go wherever you want to.
Right. Ultimate means
at that particular point, sir, could he file charges in the District of South Carolina? He would not have that ability, correct? He would have to go through that U.S. attorney.
And he'd have to go back
so
to Merrick Garland.
Authority.
All he would have to do is ask me for 515 authority, and
ask
I would
Merrick.
sign it right away, just like when he asked me to be special counsel.
So he
within
didn't
3
have
days,
authority.
I signed that.
So he didn't have ultimate authority.
He had the authority because I promised that he would have the authority.
Oh, your promise is garbage, Merrick. We want it in writing. He wanted to go and just do it. He never had ultimate authority. He had like promised future authority. He had a promise of future authority. He couldn't actually go do it. If he walked right over to California or South Carolina, as he says, or DC, then he is rejected. He's got to go through Merrick Garland, and then he's going to delegate it out. Busted.
Not have that authority. See, here's where I'm going. If he was denied the ability to bring charges in March of 22 in the District of Columbia, if he was denied the ability to bring charges in January of 23 in the Central District of California, that's not full authority.
No, it is not.
These U.S. attorneys operate as gatekeepers, so that's not full authority to do much of anything. And you know what's remarkable to me? We sit here and we look at this, and his story has changed so many times. You know whose story hasn't changed? Mr. Shapley,
Shout
Mr.
out.
Ziegler.
Shout out.
The emails that confirm that he said, I'm not the deciding person on whether charges are filed. And you know what the response back was from his colleague at work? Yep, you covered it all, Gary. That is consistent. What Mr. Weiss has done is this shell game. He doesn't have authority, but these gatekeepers at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Columbia and in the Central District of California, they would have the gatekeeping authority on whether charges are brought in their jurisdictions.
I'm sorry.
Absent that designation, correct?
Those words have no meaning. Gatekeepers, etc. Mr. Weiss said he was never denied authority. I'm the one with the authority to decide who can prosecute in a different jurisdiction.
Did you hear what he just said? Mr. Weiss said he was never denied authority. Okay, so that's not the same as he has it, obviously. He was never denied it. Doesn't mean that he has it. He's being very careful about these words. And then he says, I'm the one who decides, right? You just heard that.
Authority. I'm the one with the authority to decide who can prosecute in a different jurisdiction.
Okay.
And he promised that he would have that authority. I do not see any...
And he promised it. He is totally nabbed here. He said that he never told us that I've promised David Weiss has the ultimate authority. He says David Weiss has the ultimate authority. It is different.
Consistency here. I was not at the meeting that Mr. Shapley was referring to. I know what I guaranteed, and I know what Mr. Weiss has said I guaranteed.
Mr. Chairman, I yield the balance of my time.
It's a simple question. If he already had it, why does he need it? That's the question. You said in your statement on August 11th, you said he will continue to have the authority to bring charges where, when, and wherever he decides. So how can he continue to have a power that you just gave him? That's the fundamental question the gentleman from South Carolina was asking. If he already had it, why does he need it?
And I tried to answer that he had the authority and he continued to have
When
it.
did he specifically ask you, did you tell him ahead of time that he could get 515 status anytime? When did you tell him that he could get that if he requested it?
I made absolutely clear.
When? Did you tell him at the start of the
I made
investigation?
clear from the beginning in my statements to the Senate that he would have the authority to make any decisions that he wanted to and bring prosecutions he thought were appropriate.
Would have. He would have. Did you hear that? He never had it, okay? And we know that because he just appointed him to be special counsel status. So in my opinion, Merrick Garland lied to us. Everybody at the DOJ who had this fictional facade that David Weiss was a special counsel, they all lied to us. They said he had powers that he never did. And we know that because they're like, oh crap, we got to give him the powers. And they appointed him to be special counsel. And he is, I know this is video, this is not a transcript, but he said David Weiss would have
515 status anytime. When did you tell him that he could get that if he requested it?
I made absolutely clear.
When? Did you tell him at the start of the
I made
investigation?
clear from the beginning in my statements to the Senate that he would have the authority to make any decisions that he wanted to and bring prosecutions he thought were appropriate.
Would have. That's it right there. Not that he did have, that he would have. And they told us that he did have, okay? And I know this is semantics and word game stuff, but this, like these types of decisions, this stopped the entire Hunter Biden prosecution cold because David Weiss said that he did not have ultimate authority. And the Justice Department is just messing around in this gray area. You know, we say this phrase here sometimes that you make the money in the madness, that the gray area can be very profitable. And sometimes in the informational game, when we're transactioning knowledge and we're having conversations about who does what and when and who's in charge and who's at fault, right? All of it is messy when you can play semantics and play word word games. And David Weiss is sitting there. Merrick Garland sits here, all very consistent. I know exactly who had the authority at the date and time and who could do what and when, and he could flow chart the whole thing out and Venn diagram it up with Kamala. But that's not what we're talking about here. The actual consequence of Merrick Garland and all of this wordsmithing is David Weiss that said, I don't have the authority, like practically. He was sitting there with Shapley and the other IRS, FBI investigators, and they're saying, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. I can't do it. Leslie Wolf kept stepping on his toes. No investigation into the storage unit. You can't talk and interview all of the Biden crime family people, right? All of this is emanating from the fact that the people at the top of the investigation don't think that they have ultimate authority and they don't have ultimate power, so they can't do certain things. So it is really critical that we know what actually happened and who had authority and when. And Merrick Garland, I think, has absolutely lied to us, and his testimony today confirms that. And so this is another one from Tom McClintock, who's saying, how about these double standards that exist here, Mayor? You've got Jack Smith, who has an entire team of lawyers spending millions of dollars prosecuting Trump. We've got Robert Hur, who's kind of dragging his feet on the Biden investigation. And it just feels like you let Antifa go when you round up the J6ers, if you want to presume that maybe the Antifa people were not most of the J6ers or a portion of the J6ers. But the point is, right, there are double standards in this country. Merrick, you're at the top of the chain here. What is the problem?
From California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, looking again at the appointment of Jack Smith and David Weiss, this double standard of justice couldn't be more glaring. Jack Smith was deeply involved in the IRS scandal that targeted conservative political groups to harass. His malicious prosecution of former Governor McDonnell was unanimously overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts rebuked Smith directly for attempting to criminalize political activity. You appointed him to prosecute Joe Biden's chief rival for the presidency. And then we have the appointment of David Weiss. Weiss deliberately allowed the statute of limitations to run out on any charges that could have implicated Joe Biden in influence peddling. He originally offered Hunter Biden a sweetheart deal that was ultimately upended by the court, and he's the one you appointed to pursue the charges that could implicate Joe Biden. That leads me to only two explanations, either corruption or incompetence. Which is it?
Corruption.
Those are the kind of questions that judges would rule out of order.
I'm sure you would. Which is it?
Look, I said before, and I will say again, Mr. Weiss was the Republican-appointed United States attorney appointed by...
Do you at least see the obvious double standard applied in these two appointments?
Mr. Weiss was a Republican appointee. Mr. Smith...
who used to work with Beau Biden, okay? Hunter Biden's brother used to work with the prosecutor of Hunter in Delaware. So I get so tired of that stupid phrase, Trump appointed, Trump appointed. They kept him on. Why? Because he was their guy.
Smith is not registered to either party. His entire career was as a career prosecutor.
I'm not asking what their party registrations are. I'm asking about their records and how those records would commend them to the appointments that you made. This is a question of judgment, and it's a question of motive. What was motivating you to do this?
Mr. Smith had a nationwide reputation for integrity and for appropriate prosecution. His work can be measured by what he actually has filed. Everyone in the country can see the indictments.
How can you say that after he was so heavily implicated in the IRS scandal or the rebuke the Supreme Court gave and many other examples?
That's what he's talking about. He loved those filings. He's like, yeah, those are perfect. Those are great. Sorry, he kind of got reprimanded for those things, but that's the type of player we want, man. Hit him at the knees. Take him out at the knees, man. We don't care if it's kind of borderline gray area ethical or unconstitutional or whatever. If you're infringing on political speech, well, if it's the bad kind of dangerous political speech that Jack Smith wants to attack or criminalize by prosecuting people, that's fair with us. In fact, that's like a bonus. They're like, all right, who is the most scummy prosecutor that we can find out there all in this world? They're like, I don't know. Oh, this guy, Jack Smith, International Criminal Court. Let's get this guy. Perfect.
But let me go on. We've had two IRS whistleblowers inform Congress of attempts by senior Justice Department officials to obstruct the criminal investigation into millions of dollars of ill-gotten and undeclared income to Hunter Biden. They noted several deviations by department officials from normal process that provided preferential treatment, in this case to Hunter Biden, a direct quote, including allowing the statute of limitations to lapse, requesting IRS and FBI management level.
And it goes on. And so that is a good exchange. Double standards obviously exist. And so we wrap up with Merrick Garland. And this is a smart guy. You know, he went to the best law schools. He's somebody who was on the list nominated to be on the Supreme Court, and he didn't make it, unfortunately for him. Some people think maybe he's got an axe to grind now, but not a dummy, right? Very careful with his words. When we go through here and he changes the words from had or continues to have to would have had. All of these things are painful changes for him to have to make, but he has to make them. And so now when he gets asked a question about a very obvious, question, Merrick, did you ever communicate with the FBI about Hunter Biden? Not a complicated question. Hunter's a pretty well-known dude. Not a lot of other Hunters out there that are in the White House that I'm aware of that are easy to confuse with. So it's a pretty obvious thing. If you're going to be involved in the president's son's case, you'd think you'd remember that, wouldn't you?
Have you had personal contact with anyone at FBI headquarters about the Hunter Biden investigation?
I don't recollect the answer to that question, but the FBI works for the Justice Department. It's
I'm sorry. You don't recollect whether you've talked with anybody at FBI headquarters about an investigation into the president's son?
I don't believe that I did. I promised the Senate when I came before it for confirmation that I would leave Mr. Weiss in place and that I would not interfere with his investigation.
Okay,
I have kept that promise.
Did you see him doing that acting little routine? Oh gosh, it's a really hard answer to pull out of my brain. Oh. Watch this, so you can watch his face as he goes here, question comes, and then here, look at this, watch this right here. Oh, he even does the air in the lips, the well, I have no idea. Oh, very complicated question here. Oh, here you go.
Have you had personal contact with anyone at FBI headquarters about the Hunter Biden investigation?
I don't recollect the answer to that question, but the FBI works for the Justice Department. It's
I'm sorry. You don't recollect.
Yeah,
you don't recollect whether you've talked with anybody at FBI headquarters about an investigation into the president's son?
You do, Mayor. We all know you do. So, well, golly, it's just a confusing situation here. I'm just the Attorney General. I can't remember. You want me to remember the president's son and the FBI? I've got a lot of other things to focus on here, like domestic violent extremism. I can't remember what the president's son does. What a joke. All right, so that's our Attorney General. Difficult time remembering things. And when they start misremembering things, it's a bad sign for them. That's not a good situation for them to be in. Hillary Clinton was in that position, like with a cloth. No, I don't recall, right? That's when you know they're totally busted. So Merrick Garland, blasted in Congress, will continue to investigate this, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and checking out robertgovea.com to sign up for our daily newsletter. We'd love to join you in your inbox, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.